Good morning. How are you? Welcome to 7 at 7. We're going to wait for everybody to get online. Glad you're joining us this morning, and I hope you're doing well. Well, I shouldn't assume that it's the morning. Maybe you're joining us for somewhere in the world where it's not morning right now. It's lunchtime or dinner time, and glad you're here. You should let us know where you're coming from. Jamaica. Hello, Jamaica. How are you? You like my new shirt? If you're around one of our locations, you should be able to get one of these shirts this weekend. It's New Zealand. Hello, New Zealand. Tampa, Florida. My sister lives in Tampa. Maybe you know her. Glad you're here. Who else we got here? Charlotte, of course, Mississippi, South Africa. We have friendships with South Africa. Feels like we have a lot of people in South Africa that are following our church. Brazil, and then from Brazil to Rock Hill. Welcome, Rock Hill. Hello, Tim Farah. I bet my wife is watching. Are you there, Heather? If my wife is watching, then my kids are watching too. So, good to see you. Hey, Cherish. Nice to see you this morning. So, we are going to... That was Autumn's hair, in case you were wondering what that was. That was... glad you're here. Glad you're part of 7 at 7. My name is John Bishop, and I'm excited to be a part of this experience. We're going to have a good time this morning. Just waiting for the okay that we're ready to go, and when that happens, we'll get started. So last night at church, if you live in this area and had that opportunity to be at church last night, it was incredible. I was at UC. Pastor Stephen was preaching the first message for this series that we're in, 7 Mile Miracle, and it was incredible. If you're at UC, you're probably shouting out all caps right now. It's incredible. Trinidad. Well, welcome everybody to 7 at 7. We are live and we're going to get going this morning. We're going to get going right now. If you're not here in the Eastern Standard Time Zone, it might be lunchtime or dinner time for you, but we're glad you're with us for 7 at 7. This has been an opportunity for us to explore the 7 last sayings of Jesus as he was dying on the cross. He made 7 statements, and that must be extremely significant. And so we're embracing those last 7 statements in a season that we're embracing leading up to Easter called 7 Mile Miracle. And this week we are focusing on Jesus' word of forgiveness. In Luke chapter 23, verse 34, Jesus, hanging on the cross, looked out at the people who were murdering him, and he said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they are doing." And so we want to embrace that word this week and focus on it. Pastor will be preaching that word this weekend as we kick off the second week of this series. He'll be preaching about forgiveness, and you'll definitely want to be a part of that this weekend. If you can be here locally and visit one of our locations, or if you can join us online, that'd be awesome. And also, Pastor Stephen has recently released a book that you can get at anywhere you can get books, Amazon, barnesandnoble.com, 7milemiracle.com. You should go there and get that. And I wanted to focus specifically on a phrase that Pastor Stephen wrote in page 33 of the chapter on forgiveness. And he says, "There is no limit to how many times I will forgive you, and there is no limit to how many times I can empower you to forgive others. There is no limit to how many times I can heal your broken heart when you're hurt. There is no limit to how free you can be." And I love the idea. Pastor Stephen has been preaching the connection between forgiveness and freedom for years, and that connection has set me free. And I want to tell you a specific story about that as we get going. But first, my name is John Bishop, and I am, one thing that you probably should know about me is that I am an old soul. That's what Mom tells me anyway. She says when I was born, by the time I was 2, she thought I was 40. And I've always enjoyed books that are old. If the author's not dead, I'm probably not interested. And I've always listened to old music. I'd rather listen to Billie Holiday's Verve Collection or John Coltrane saxophone solos or Charlie Parker making it happen than what's on the radio. I've always been that way. But one area of my life where I struggled to mature was in my spiritual life. I didn't become a Christian until I was 19, and specifically with forgiveness. I feel like it took me a while to figure that one out. And so in April 2007, I was headed back from seminary, and I was riding in my red Ford Ranger on 485, which is a highway in our city. And I was processing a lot. There was a lot going on in that month. I had just come on staff at Elevation Church as the e-groups director. and that was exciting. I was being ordained that month and officially becoming a pastor of Elevation Church. I was about to graduate seminary after 3 years of investing my time there. My wife was about a month out from having our first baby, and that was extremely exciting for us because we'd struggled with infertility for 3 years. So we felt like God's favor was on our life, and we were moving in an incredible direction. But what I did not expect to be focusing on that truck ride that came rushing into my mind was the change that I felt towards bitterness and resentment I felt towards my father. And in that truck ride, I had about 45 minutes before I got home, I realized I could not become a pastor. I could not join the staff of Elevation Church. I could not have all the knowledge that comes from training in seminary. I could not become the father of my new son without dealing with the bitterness that I felt towards my dad. And so I picked up my phone and I made a phone call, and we had a 45-minute conversation. And it wasn't necessarily an easy conversation or a fun conversation, but one thing I had resolved in my heart to do was to release the bitterness and resentment that I felt towards my dad in that conversation. And I expected that when I ended that call, that forgiveness would be final. And now, when you think about the theology of forgiveness, Jesus hanging on the cross, he said, Father, forgive them. We believe as Christians that forgiveness was final. And when you place your faith in Christ, he forgives you finally. And it's done and over with because Jesus knows all things. And so as Jesus was hanging on the cross, he forgave you for the sins that you committed yesterday, for today, and the ones that you don't even know you're going to commit down the road. Jesus' forgiveness is final. But see, my understanding is limited. And when I embrace relationships in my life, I only know what I know in the moment. And I can only forgive the offense that I feel or understand in the moment. But what I want to teach about this morning that God has been teaching me over the past 10 years is that forgiveness has phases. Forgiveness has phases. And so I ended that phone call, and when the call was done, I realized I had forgiven my father. And the bitterness and resentment that I felt was lifted. And I really did feel lighter. And I got home and I told my wife about it, and I was like, it's done. It's done. I forgave my dad. It's over. And I'm not going to ever experience that again. And the next morning I woke up and I was surprised to discover I felt the same way. And the next morning I woke up again and I realized I felt the same way. And it's been 10 years. And I can honestly say I have never gone back to what I felt towards my father prior to that phone call. Never once. I love my dad. He's a good man. And I was able to achieve a level of connection and relationship to him in that phone call that I had not yet experienced prior to that phone call. Forgiveness, in a sense, was final in that moment. What I could not anticipate was a month later, I was holding my baby boy in the hospital room, and I was now a father for the first time. And looking at my infant son, I was experiencing everything that you experience. And if you're a parent, you know this. If you're not a parent, just trust me that when you're holding your kid for the first time, there's something that opens up in your heart. It's a box of love you didn't even know you had. It's also fear and anxiety of, oh my Lord, I'm responsible for a new human being, and they're tiny and fragile. And I was experiencing all of that, and in that moment, a question popped into my head. And it centers on what I want to help you understand, that forgiveness has phases. And I realized in that moment, here was the question. If your dad ever felt about you the way that you feel about this little baby boy, how could he do and say the things that he did to you? And I thought I was done. I thought forgiveness was final. What I discovered in that moment is that forgiveness has phases. And I had forgiven my dad as a son. I didn't even know I was going to need to forgive him now that I am a father myself. And going back through the process of understanding how to let my dad be who he is rather than expect him to be what I need him to be for me. And to process forgiveness and to accept the reality that forgiveness has phases was a real struggle for me. And I would say, it's been 10 years or so since then. I have embraced the fact that for my relationships to stay fresh and current, I have to allow forgiveness to have phases. And for you to accept the relationships as they are, you have to learn what Jesus described on the cross. You have to understand what Pastor Stephen said here, is that forgiveness is connected with freedom. And if you want to have relationships that are free and authentic and real, you have to embrace the fact that forgiveness has phases. And so I hope that encourages you this morning. I hope your lunch went well if you're in Europe. I hope that your kids didn't get too much syrup. on their breakfast table. And if you are anywhere near one of our locations, make sure you come to church this weekend to hear Pastor Stephen's sermon on forgiveness. And don't forget to check out 7milemiracle.com or anywhere books are sold and grab this book. The concepts in this book will absolutely set you free. Thank you for joining us at 7 at 7, and we'll see you tomorrow morning.